Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. It is 4 o'clock, and this is the regular meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I am president of the board and calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand or to request to speak. So for a roll call, my name is Jeff Randall. I am president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Okay, we have all three commissioners and we have an agenda. And we had a special meeting prior to this one where we had a presentation on our 2023 financial audit. And I think we were going to consider adding an item from that meeting, actually taking action. So Ken, did you want to make that motion?
Well, do you want to list that as new business or do you want a motion right now?
Well, this is the agenda. Motion to adopt agenda is presented. So this is where we would
We can
modify the agenda. And yeah, I think new, it would be new business. And would that be okay to put it at the beginning, Kevin, before the Hadlock wastewater presentation? Okay. So I'll just, since I'm talking about it, I'll just propose that we add the financial 2023 financial audit acceptance of the audit as a motion for new business. That would be the new 9.1.
So motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of and nothing else, Kevin, on changes to the agenda? Okay, so with that change to the agenda, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the modified agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right, we have a approved modified agenda. So the next item is public comment. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disturb, disrupt, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. Do we have anyone who would like to make comments on things not on the agenda or on the consent agenda? I'm not seeing any hands for people online. And not seeing any hands from people in the room. So with that, we will move on to manager and staff reports.
So on manager's report, we're going to talk a little bit about the outage we had on Friday where our fiber went down. I'll have a little discussion and then Will can jump in and discuss also. So as you know, there was a contractor working for CenturyLink doing a bore. They hit our fiber that it is the backbone of Jefferson County for our internet. So everything went down. It was an extended outage. We string new fiber. Our crews spliced everything. We had it back up and running. On Monday, Will and I had a meeting on, things we could do better, things we've learned from this outage, how to proceed, things that we thought were going to work that didn't. So then again, this morning, we met with the broadband management side of things. And I think we have some plans moving forward, things we're going to do a little different. There's a lot of things that we did right. There's also a lot of things that we need to improve on and that we can do better.
So Kevin, could you elaborate there? Are you talking about the subcontractor for another entity that led up to this that you're looked at, or is it what we did in response? Could you be a little more clear about what you're alluding to?
So we can't keep people from damaging the fiber. That's going to happen in the future. What we can do is build different pathways, make sure they work. We can have better understanding of the existing infrastructure we had that was, installed 8, 9 years ago. The locates, we have to do a better job on locate. So I'm really not talking about the contractor at all. PUD has a responsibility to maintain the fiber. When it gets hit, it's our responsibility to fix it in a timely fashion. And we need plans and dedicated people, which we have, to execute these plans to keep the outage to a shorter duration. It's no
Okay.
different than on the electrical side.
So what I'm hearing is we're primarily kind of looking at our response. We could have done better. We could have maybe had our system designed to allow alternate routes for, sounds like, getting communication through. So if you got a break in one point, you still have access in other places. But I guess I'm also wondering about, and that's good, that we're like, okay, when a fire happens or when a break happens, we want to be able to respond quickly. But I'm also interested in the cause, because presumably they indicated they were going to do work and we went out and marked stuff. I'm kind of wondering, how did they not know that our fiber was there, and how did they hit it?
So they're boring our fiber and the wave fiber. What it was explained to me, we were basically side by side. They augured through between the two conduits, and they were deep. When they pulled the rods back in, they were reaming it to get ready to put the conduit in. That's when they snagged us.
Mm.
So,
So they knew we were there, but just the process of putting in, you're working in tight confines, it sounds like.
well, and it's a bore. It's not open trench. So they're 22 feet deep. They're boring underneath Chimicum Creek, and they're basically blind.
Yeah.
So our discussions internally have been not so much focused on their issues. Our discussion internal is how do we do it better next time? Are there things we can improve on? And there are. Are there things that we need to do, not necessarily the contractor? And that's what the discussions have been the last 2 days. I feel we've had good discussions moving forward, and they're tough discussions. Everyone, it really goes back to some of the same discussions we had 12 years ago when we first took over the power and we had outages that didn't go as well as they should have. We've learned, and now we have a team of linemen that are just awesome out there, and we need to learn the same things on the broadband side.
Okay. So I guess back to the cause, it sounds like this was a difficult bore. It's deep. It sounds like it was almost bad luck in some ways. That
It was
they
it
hit
was
it.
bad luck.
Okay.
But it was also our locate should have been better.
Okay.
And I think if we had better records on some of the old fiber, that would have enabled us to do things quicker. The outage was attacked on 2 fronts, trying to reroute a different direction and string fiber at the same time, which that's is what we will always do. Try to optimize our plans to get it going. We felt we had a second path off the peninsula that we're still working out why that was in that same pathway versus the pathway we thought it was. So this is really we'll bring more information back to the board, but this is to assure the board that we are working forward in a positive way, how best to make this not happen again, no matter where the fault is or how it happens.
Okay. Ken, you got your hand up?
I do. So Kevin, will the cable that got destroyed will that route be abandoned?
So we will, that cable is abandoned, but that route, when the contractor is working for CenturyLink and Astound, and they were gonna pull 2 conduits back for the new bridge construction. We have added a third contract for the, or conduit for the PUD. So when they bring it back, they will put in a new conduit for the PUD, and we will put fiber in that conduit. Right now, though, we will leave the overhead in place at least until the bridge work is completed, and we have to open up that section. For the bridge work, we have to open up that span for the electrical. So at that time, we will put the fiber in so that the fiber won't cause a problem with the crane work for the new culverts going in there.
So I have a question about when you have something happen like this, with one communication company doing work and then it impacts others, what kind of damages are due? I don't know if that's a Joel question or a Kevin question.
Who all has claims?
Yeah. And I suppose you might have customers at the other end who, I mean, how does this all work out? Typically.
So ultimately, it's going to boil down to our locates. Were they close enough or not?
Okay.
If our locates are spot on, we go back and say, hey, we're spot on, your fault. I don't think we can do that in this case. We're still reviewing on some why our marks are where they are.
Okay.
And then come back, and on this one, I believe we're gonna have to eat the costs.
Okay.
But we're still looking at something.
And was this fiber part of the original BTOP?
Yes.
It's that old. Okay.
Yeah, it was put in by Noanet.
Okay. Do commissioners have any more questions on this one?
But if Will's gonna present, I'll wait till Will's done, maybe.
I don't have a presentation.
I
Okay.
thought Will was gonna answer something. So I guess I'll follow up with you a little bit then. I mean, just how big of a project did this turn into be dollar wise? I mean, what kind of a hit is this? And then do we have insurance that covers this? If it is, we are found at fault. I mean, a little bit more detail about how this plays out.
At this time, I just don't know, Dan.
Because I know, again, from construction back, that was the rule. If you hit fiber, you were, it could be $1 million a day. Obviously, we're not in that ballpark here, but this is going to be a substantial amount of time, resources put to this. I'm just curious, do we have insurance to cover this if we are found at fault?
So the work we did, or our crews, we won't turn those in anyway. The only thing that, like I say, we still have some investigation to do. I have to spend some time with Joel. So the costs, I just don't know at this time.
We have more investigation to
Correct.
do. Okay.
And we don't know what kind of collateral claims there could be. I saw, social media lit up with all sorts of things, which is the last question I'll ask here. So I guess I'll ask on the locates, are we doing that internally? Are we using a third party? I mean, how are we doing the locates? You've alluded to it. We have to do.
I think that it's all under investigation. So we're not going to be in a position to answer any of those questions at this point.
So
And that it probably makes sense, maybe if you can just stand by for another week or so till we come to a conclusion about that'd be my preference.
So I think this is a situation where it's more appropriate for the board to allow staff to finish the work before we start asking a lot of detailed questions.
Yeah, I'll defer to a later date. Then.
Okay.
You have a question?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And this was a big item. We don't have it listed as a regular agenda item, but because it was kind of a big deal, if there are questions of those listening, I'll entertain them. So Tom, I see you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you, Commissioner. I was a member, if you will, of the original BTOP study group. And so this whole issue of having diverse routing and alternate paths off the peninsula was certainly one of the things that we talked about in depth. So it was really disappointing to have a single point of failure like that take down the entire area. And Kevin, you mentioned that it certainly was a surprise to you when your alternate paths that you expected to work didn't work. So I guess my only question about that is, or comment is, it's like having a backup. A backup that you don't test is worthless. So you can back up your files all you want, but until you actually try to restore a file, you don't know if it's any good. So the same thing applies in this case. If you are under the belief that you have alternate paths to from anywhere, it would be a good idea to test those proactively before the next backhoe finds the next piece of fiber. But I do appreciate how quickly you guys were able to react to this thing, get everybody back on the air. Didn't affect me because I have Starlink, but I certainly heard from my friends and neighbors that, hey, everybody's down. Anyway, so thanks to the PUD and your crew for doing a really great job of getting everybody restored. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
I would like, Tom, that is part of what we discussed today is the testing aspect. We appreciate the comment.
Any other questions, Leo?
So, yeah. So diverse paths are really important. That's obvious. So, I mean, luckily this wasn't something like a dragged anchor over at the Hood Canal Bridge, because we would have been looking at probably months instead of hours. And I did ask that question about, hey, what happened to the diverse path? And not talking to Noah and Ed or the PUD, just other engineers that work for other companies that were actually maintaining it. With BPA going down 101, they go, yeah, a couple of years ago, we cut that out of the budget.
It wasn't out of ours.
No, that's right. Like I said, it wasn't the PUDs and it wasn't Noah Nets. It was somebody else's, and they cut it out of the budget. So we discontinued that and was relying on this. So now when you guys paid for the BPA, a while back, I went to Will and said, hey, okay, so you've got this Olympia to Port Angeles. I want a connection in Happy Valley. Drop me in Happy Valley, so I can get a diverse. And the intention with that was to get a diverse route back up on the Satsup's Ring, because from Happy Valley you can go down the coast or you can go down 101. So, which I was told, well, we don't have any plans for that. So I think it'd be a really good time to
yeah, we're
do
looking
that.
at all options, including Happy Valley.
Okay. Thanks, Leo. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
So I do have one last question or comment for staff. And, again, I saw a lot on social media, a lot of people guessing, other people that acted like they had knowledge of it, whatever. So my question is messaging. I didn't look at the paper today. I don't know what's in the papers, but we really should get out, if we haven't done this already, I could have missed it, some sort of a presser with the best facts that we have. I realize legal counsel said it's under investigation, things like that. But I think we should, as soon as we know, or if we know now, something to kind of straighten the record out a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people out there who still have some misconceptions or misunderstandings about what happened. So I think an interim presser might help get, I don't know what you put in it. Again, I don't know enough detail, so I'm not going to pursue it anymore today. But if we could get something out there or on the web and on the website, I think that would be a good thing to do.
Well, and it sounds like part of it is, we can, if you choose to talk more, you can talk about our immediate response, but what our longer term plans to make it more reliable and what we're going to do to try and prevent this thing from, that's still under development. So it sounds like
We have some definite things we're working on,
Yeah.
and we'll bring additional information to the board in upcoming meetings.
yeah. And the fair might be an interesting opportunity to talk about this with people. So anyway, did you have more staff report to cover?
Quite a bit more.
Okay, go for it.
And I may have Annette jump in if she could help me here. We have a scheduling question for the board for October 7th board meeting. That's the first Monday in October. And
Don't we have to have a hearing on that
The
date for the
hearing,
that's the
budget?
hearing for the budget.
Okay.
Yes, it's the hearing for the budget on October 7th. That's the first Monday.
Okay.
And the question is, commissioners, we've done it both ways. We've had our regular meeting prior to, and we've had it the other way where we've had the hearing before the regular meeting. So in a few weeks or so, I'm going to post it. I'm going to have it in the paper 2 weeks prior, of course, to the hearing. And so I'll just need to know your preference on if we have the regular meeting first or the hearing first. So we either start at 3 p.m. with one and then 5 p.m. for the other, or you choose the time.
Maybe it'd help me to remember how much of a presentation and how much time the hearing takes, because I know, we do budget in kind of pieces. So what are your thoughts
Well,
on that?
We've allocated about an hour before for the meeting.
Okay,
So, and I'm using the term maybe wrong, Joel, but if we don't get done or we don't take a vote, then we continue the meeting on to another date or time.
and the intent of the budget hearing is to present the budget and allow the public a chance to formally make comments. At a minimum, we're required by law to give them
Right.
folks that opportunity. They may have more opportunities, but okay. And I think, so Annette's basic question is, do you want it first before the regular meeting?
Really, 3, in the past, we've either done 3 or 5
A start time?
as a start time for the hearing, because that has to be in the publication on what time the hearing.
And And what we've done in the past, we've done a variety of things in the past. But if the commission doesn't get through with the hearing or its deliberation on the budget, you can continue it to the next regularly scheduled meeting or a special meeting until you're done with your deliberation,
The idea
and
of
then you close.
5 o'clock is people who work, if they want to come.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
there's feelings on, and for me, it works that if we have a meeting going and we're not done and the hearing starts, we say, okay, we're going to continue the meeting, and then we open the hearing and we do the hearing. And when the hearing's done, if we want to go back to the meeting, we do that. So is that kind of what the board would like?
This
to do?
is arguably one of the, if not the most important meetings we have for public participation throughout the year. I really think we should have it start at 5. And if it takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours. I think we should have it open-ended and let the public make sure they get their comments in, do our other business meeting before that. So that's my personal preference.
Okay. Ken, any thoughts? Oh, you might be muted.
I was muted. I'm okay with starting at 5 for the hearing.
Okay, so I think what we'd like to do then is have the hearing advertised at 5, and then, the regular meeting, whether there's an executive session first or whatever, I think we can leave that up to staff, whether you want to start that at 3 or 4. Commissioners, are you okay with that? Leaving that up to staff, depending on how much work exists?
Yeah, yes, I'm okay with that.
Well, we normally, again, because we set that for that time for our meetings, I don't know, because we're changing that,
True.
we have to have a certain amount of, pre-notice of a new date and time. How does
Right.
that work out exactly?
So I guess the regular meeting would start at 4. The budget hearing would start at 5. And if you feel like you need a executive session at 3, that's your option.
Yep.
But yeah, we keep that's a good point.
Yeah,
We keep the regular meeting at 4 so people know when they can do public comment and and then we'll have this on the website so they'll see it's a once a year meeting that has kind of its own,
And it's on Monday.
and its own pattern to it. So yeah. Okay. So regular meeting at 4, public hearing at 5, if needed, an executive session can be at 3, and we'll continue the meetings as needed. So that
Okay.
makes sense, Annette. You're the one who
Yes,
asked.
it does. I understand, and that's the way I'll set it up.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And also, we have the option of doing an executive session at any other time that we choose.
True.
Correct.
A couple quick notes, and then I'm going to turn the presentation over to Will and Melanie. And this is an FYI to the board. We're looking at possibly sharing an FTE on for internet services, like an IT help desk person, where we would work with the port, and this person would be paid by the port and by the PUD. They would work for the PUD, but the services would be rendered to the port on a couple day a week process, right?
And sorry, what was this cover again?
Their IT needs.
Oh, IT. Okay.
They presently use a company out of Hitsap
Mhm.
that comes in a day, day and a half, a
Mhm.
week. We could use some additional help, and the port could use somebody local.
Mhm.
So we are looking down the possibilities. Melanie, Will, and I met with the port yesterday, and we hope that it works. It would be
Okay.
good for the PUD. We would need the extra help. So that is something we will be working on. Joel will get involved when we get down
Sure.
into the details of the.
And I'm all for
interlocal.
keeping money in the county.
Yeah.
If we can hire somebody local, that's great.
My schedule is going to be a little hectic. I have some PTO coming that I'm going to take. I have a wedding to go to the rest of this week, first of next week. Because of the outage, I do think I will go to Noanet on Wednesday. I will be back to the PUD Thursday afternoon, and we have our budget meeting where Mike is going to present the budget for the first 2 hours on Friday, the 16th. And then we will roll right into an executive session, review an employee. That meeting was already scheduled for 3 hours.
Okay.
So we're just trying to use it. If Mike runs a little bit long, we don't think he will, but we have some flexibility there.
Okay. All right.
Now, one of the things that we discussed in our 10-year plan is being adaptable and looking at things in a different way. Because of how things have happened in the last week, actually since our meeting, some things have came up that gives us some options. We're going to look at a project. During those discussions, it was discussed that we would have champions, people at the PUD to help make sure these jobs are done on a timely fashion, to make sure they're within budget, to really take projects and run with them. This particular project that I'm talking about today would be championed by Will and Melanie. The other directors will have projects also, but this first one is a project that I think needs to be done. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will and Melanie.
We're just gonna go over, well, let's go back to the beginning slide. We have an opportunity in that we have an early arrival of 2 transformers. And Kevin had engaged ICPE, our contract electric engineer out of Salt Lake City, to begin developing a long-range program for upgrading our substation or our grid. But with the arrival in with the estimated arrival in October of 2 substation transformers, Kevin really wanted to move more quickly and solve a couple of our capacity problems as fast as we can. And to do that, it's going to be a little bit of reshuffling the deck. I wanted to call this 3-card Monty, but I didn't think that would be the best title to use here. So we got the substation transformer shuffle.
Well, the house always wins in that scenario, doesn't it?
Substation.
That's great.
Substation transformer musical chairs.
It's a little bit of that too, the musical chairs. Yeah.
The music chair.
Yeah. So we've got the early delivery. We've sent it to project, to the engineering contractor. We met with the contractor this morning. It's going to be a push for them. And a lot of it's going to be difficult to get all of the equipment and materials on time, but it's possible. And so if it's possible, we want to see if we can work quickly to make it happen. And this maximizes our existing assets by reshuffling transformers. And I'll show you quickly how that happens. As Kevin said, when he presented the 10-year plan last week or 2 weeks ago, adaptability was a big part of it. It's going to be, what are the opportunities that we have right now? Where can we take the steps to make the biggest impact and improve the systems for our customers? This is one of them.
And it seems like part of this is kind of looking forward to the winter. I mean, could this work be done before the winter peaking time? Is that one of the ideas?
That's our goal.
Yeah, okay.
My concern.
Yep.
Concern.
And again, it's an ambitious project. We have a lot of ambitious projects. It's a fun.
Ambition is our middle.
Yeah, it's exactly ambition and innovation. We want to do it differently. We want to do it fast. We want to make it interesting. So we have the Quilcene substation transformer, 20 megawatts that we ordered, and we have the Port Ludlow transformer that was refurbished. So what's planned? Here's the shuffle layout right here. For the Quilcene substation, we have an existing 5 megawatt transformer, which is undersized for that area. We need to pick up a little bit more load in that area and relieve load elsewhere. So we would put the new 20 megawatt transformer into Bay 1 in Quilcene. We would take that 5 megawatt transformer, we would put it in Discovery Bay substation, where loads are around 3 megawatts. It currently has an existing 20 megawatt transformer that would leave and go to Dana Roberts in the second bay. With Dana Roberts, with the 2 bays, we could pick up a good sized load off of the Hastings substation, take over the hospital load, and lighten the load for Hastings, which is at capacity. So in this quick little shuffle with mostly existing materials, we can get a lot done and improve reliability and capacity. At the Quilcene substation, that would also take over the load from the Coyle Peninsula.
So not to get too far ahead of your presentation, just what you have here, one of the transformers that's coming in, was it designated to go to Quilcene anyways? Was that correct? So that part could happen. The concern for me is the switch over at Discovery Bay. I don't know how long that would take, because can you divert power during the time to switch those out? How would that look and how would that work? Because again, we're getting into storm season, we're getting into higher load, and it really concerns me of how much risk we put the grid at by making these kind of major changes. Quilcene's pretty simple. That seemed to be a no-brainer. But I'm curious more about the Discovery Bay station and how that part of it would work. What kind of pre-work has to be done there to make that switch? How long would that switch take? What's the distribution of load going to look like when that substation goes down to make that switch? If you could elaborate on that a little more, because I have concerns doing this during storm season.
Is it okay if I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Put it in perspective, the PUD is paying $1.3 million for a transformer. I have a 20 MVA transformer feeding Discovery Bay at 3 megawatts. Rough numbers, by doing this swap, it's going to save the PUD $1 million for a transformer that, if we don't do it, costs us. So to swap out a transformer, in ideal situations, it would take us a day.
Wow.
You
If you don't have other equipment, you've got to
you
change out.
literally turn the substation off. You take a crane, you pull the old one out, you put the new one in. It's a 8 to 10 hour process. There are some additional work that has to be done there, but for a day's outage, it frees up an asset that we can use other places that I believe is worth the day outage. Now, we can pick up some load, depending on time of year, from Clallam County. We have an intertie through them. It can't pick up a lot, but we can pick up some load back in the, close to the Diamond Point area. So part of this plan is to better utilize the assets of the PUD.
No, and I get that. Like I said, I was just curious about the Discovery Bay switch out, what had to be done before that could happen and what kind of an outage you were looking at. And I think you answered that part of the questions.
Should we let staff keep going? Okay.
Yeah, and the goal of this is to put us ahead 2.5 years in capacity building and reliability from the plan we presented 2 weeks ago. So if we do have to take some customer outages, or if we have to shuffle some loads around, we believe it's worth that effort. And everything will be done to minimize impacts. So the next most important slide, looks like Jameson took it out. I had put in the Super Bowl shuffle slide in there. Yeah. Because if I'm thinking shuffle, I grew up in Chicago, 1986 Bears. I just can't
That's a
can't help
nightmare
it.
for me.
Yeah.
Patriots fan.
Oh, sorry. Transformers shuffle number 1. We went over that. That's the taking out the existing 5, putting in the new 20 megawatt. And the idea is to have it be as low impact as possible to be able to do the work as quickly as possible. There is some fusing and regulator work to be done. And that's part of what we have to identify quickly with the engineering. Okay, transformer shuffle number 2 is the Discovery Bay work, moving out the 20, putting in the 5. And we require some fusing and some regulator sizing. And any work we can do beforehand as soon as possible and get initiated to make the process go quicker, we will do that.
And I remember, Kevin, you talked a little bit about that 5 megawatt, that smaller transformer. I assume this is what the engineers are for, and you and everybody else does. It's like, that this will work. You won't get it there and go, oops, there's something weird about this. It's not working. That we know this will work.
We know this swap will work.
Okay.
Well, I think the timing is gonna matter because again, once we bring in, now that's the new substation or the new transformer that go into Quilcene, correct? The absolute brand new and not the retrofit. So again, explain the break-in time, oils and testing and temperatures or that sort of thing. When that one goes in, what kind of timing are you looking at exporting the 5 megawatt out of there?
So, and I go,
Make sure we don't move it and then all of a sudden find out like we did at Ludlow that, a couple days later they found, or a week later, we had to there's some tuning that needed to be done. So
a typical transformer, when you move it from off a truck to a pad, you let it set so that any air bubbles come out. I've energized them under similar circumstances where you take outages, so you have a lot of your customers out. You let it sit for an hour, and then you also, once you energize it, you leave it energized for an hour before you start bringing up load. So there is some time like that, but depending on the situation and work there at Quilcene, a lot of the load we can move to Chimicum substation, so there's not as many people out. The work, all of this will be choreographed to the nth degree. Melanie and Will be responsible down to timing. The crane shows up on this day. These are the crews that are here. These are the things. So I hear your concerns, and they're valid concerns, but in the planning of a project like this, that's in the details and they can be worked out.
I just trying to get a timeline, somewhat of a 30,000 foot timeline of how you would see this playing out. before, like I said, before we exported the, the 5 megawatt one out of there, regardless of whether it was ready to go in or not at Discovery Bay, how long of a break-in period do we give that new one before we start moving stuff away? So.
It sounds like you pretty much know within a couple hours whether it's gonna work.
Correct.
And I presume they test these things at the factory too before they ship them out.
They tested at the factory and again on site.
Okay. All right.
And we'll have more updates on this project as this goes on.
Right.
It was this morning that we got the okay from the engineer that they could do the work to support the project and make it happen.
Okay. And presumably if there was like some weird storm going on and we had issues and our crews are all out, we would, we'd work through that. We'd delay stuff until the dust settles.
Correct. Melanie, do you want to cover this one and some of what we talked about this morning?
Does that next slide, or
However you want to do it, either way, or you want to do,
I was gonna do the timeline.
okay, I'll wait for you
I
there
had a
then.
question on Dana
Sure.
Roberts substation before you leave that one too.
Okay, yeah, so Dana Roberts is gonna need the most prep work. And that's gonna be a lot of what the engineer is gonna focus on right away. And we have some of the equipment, some of it we have to order. But we need to have those designs put together before we can proceed. We're gonna do whatever we can to prep the site. And that will be where the used transformer will come into Bay 2. And it will be used to pick up about 10 megawatts of additional load.
Okay.
Again, to alleviate the hospital and to improve capacity for Hastings substation.
Okay, so, and my question related to what we learned from the winter peak that happened where we saw the Port Townsend substations. I think you presented information in the past that they were like at or above capacity. So my question was, does this literally give us 10 megawatts more of capacity or 20 megawatts more of capacity, or what does it do for us in Port Townsend area?
And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were above capacity at Hastings, over 20 megawatts, and we were at 16 megawatts on Dana Roberts.
Okay,
So we're adding 10 more, so that's at 26. So we should be able to handle the peak loads directly. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have issues at the end of the line like we've had
right.
with voltage and other issues, but at least for the substation, that frees up and generates a lot of extra capacity. And again, puts us at a much better state than we would be for otherwise if we wait 2.5 years.
Okay, and I know that our talks about the new substation that's planned near the mill has been identified for long-term needs, both in Port Townsend as well as outside of Port Townsend, but this helps us some right away. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, that's my questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Collins has his hand up.
Oh, Ken?
Yeah, thank you. So when is this project slated to start, and what do you anticipate in terms of length of time to completion?
The flow chart, don't you?
Yep, the project started this morning, and I'll let Melanie cover the the rest of the timeline in a slide or two.
So the ultimate goal is to complete the project by the end of the year. We know, probably early January, maybe more realistic, but it's a moving target. So from now until October, we'd work with ICPE on the engineering. And then from October through November, we'd work on the site prep, put up the steel towers, move transformer 1. November through January, we do the shuffle of transformer 2, transformer 3. And then the testing would occur in late December, early January. Like Will and Kevin has said, it's a moving target. We did get a commitment from ICPE this morning to partner with us on this, but some of the timeline is dependent on materials and just how quickly we can procure them.
Yeah, and I had a couple questions along that line. So is this part of the contract work that ICPE is already doing for us, or are we amending the contract for them to do more work for this particular project? What's the cost for engineering?
The cost will be included in the total budget. We didn't have a breakout for it at this time. we're reshuffling their priorities to work on this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're under contract now. The work that they're
Yep.
being done is under contract now. So that's part of the answer to that. And then Melanie just alluded to part of one of my other questions, and that is, what do we have for reclosers, regulators, wire capacitors, bus work, whatever all is going to go into this? How much of an issue will the supply chain and the materials we need, what's that going to be? I mean, realistically, I know it's a crystal ball time here, but just trying to get a gauge for how we think this is all going to play out.
Can I pass that one back to Will or Kevin?
We have some material. It's gonna be a challenge. There's just no two ways about it. It'll be a tight time frame. But, I believe it's doable. We have, we did material inventory, today. With what we have, how it could be used with this. ICP went and talked to a steel tower manufacturer. If they had their drawings soon enough, they could have them delivered on site in November. Some of the questions, Dan, I can't answer because we don't know. But I do know if we don't try, we won't accomplish it.
No, if we don't ask the questions, there's always that curiosity. Did we check every box? Did we dot every I, cross every T? So I'm just trying to do my due diligence to understand this project. And I have two more questions related to it, and then I'll let you move on. And the first one is, you alluded to it a little bit already. Can you refresh my memory? Again, now we're getting to budget costs. This project, you obviously have another slide here that shows some of the costs. How much of the work that's being proposed here was already in the 2024 budget? Was any of this work already in our 2024? So it's all going to be reflected in the 2025 budget, correct? Then is that what I'm hearing?
Some of these dollars we will spend will have to come out of the 2024 budget.
So I think it'd be good to see that breakout so that we can understand for the 2025 budget what exactly the cost for this option will be as opposed to the 10-year plan you brought us. Because again, that's still in flux as well. And that's the last question I have is how does this impact, I know again, 30,000 foot level, because there's a lot of questions about the 10-year proposal that you made. How much will this impact the priority of of the projects in that 10-year plan? From a budgetary, 2025 budgetary perspective.
We have to continue on with the 10-year plan, whether we do this or not. What this does is pick us up 2.5 years to give us some time to get the materials. So this is really a stopgap measure. And we will work with Mike on some of these numbers for you. But honestly, a lot of these numbers, because we're expediting construction, will be hit in 2024. Because that's when the dollars are going to be spent. The big ticket item, such as the transformer, it's on site. We pay for that regardless. So they're smaller ticket items, but they are going to be costly to put the transformer pad in. But Dana Roberts, but that transformer pad is the same one we were going to put in anyway 3 or 4 years down the road. The design, even though we're paying for it today, would have been paid for a couple years from now for the same outcome. Only ours is hopefully within the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. Last comment is it just gets tricky to look at the 2025 budget as we start to and I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing this. I think we should be looking at all alternatives and the positives outweigh the negatives. It sounds like at the moment with this particular option. So, but again, budgetarily, we're running up against some hard stops on budget. So I think we're going to have to really do some due diligence in figuring out what the actual net differences in costs are going to be between the 24 budget and the 25 budget.
So how I see this is staff literally just gave us the overview 2 weeks ago. Now you're like, hey, we can start implementing part of this. You've come up with a bright idea. So what I'm seeing is you're presenting the commissioners a plan, and I'm interested in it. I think it's a good use of the equipment we have on our staff and trying to get ahead a little bit of this problem, these series of problems that we identified. And I think what the commissioners are probably going to want to see is Dan is talking about as we go through the budget process, let us know, how is this affecting the 2024 budget? Keep us surprised in managers reports. Here's, the engineering's coming through, the parts are coming, keep us posted as how this is going to go, because it's going to kind of develop over the next 6 months. And we have the budget as a separate task.
Well, I can read the writing on the wall. Reserves are gonna be interesting to see how we utilize reserves.
Sure.
So,
Sure. It'll,
We tell you how much we do have stuff budgeted for the Closine substation and transformer. We have $850,000 for engineering for 24 and 1.1 million for a transformer in the 24 budget.
and how much of that have we already utilized?
The transformer until we get the cost.
Yeah, you don't have to give me the answer to that, Mike. That's a
but I guess
question for down the road.
so do the commissioners, I guess, do we accept that this plan sounds like it's a good idea? And that sort of reporting as we go forward, keep us posted on the project and all the work that's happening on it, and let us know the impact of the 2025 budget and 2024 budget. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, this is a dual set of tracks. I'm always good for redundancy and, different paths to go forward with, but at some point it's fish or cut bait. You got to decide, can we do both? Or is it going to be one or the other? So what's that inflection point that we have to make that call? It's going to probably be after we do the 2025 budget. That's how I see this playing out, which brings me back to my other point is reserves are going to play a big role in this. And that brings me to the next point, which is, we have a policy, a risk management policy and a financial policy that says we're going to keep 90 days of reserves. And so how far down for how long are we going to draw reserves? Does anyone want to say we're not going to use reserves on this particular plan, or?
We will use reserves. That's what reserves are for, is to do capital work. As you know, we drew it down close last time when we started to buy our fiber and those kind of things. These are discussions that will keep going. But for the first little while, the dollars are going to be small. So from my standpoint, the risk is very, very small until we get into the actual construction phase. That's when the dollars are going to heat up, when we start having to do some concrete work, modifying Dana Roberts, those kind of things. So, but to get to that point, it's a huge labor task. It's management working through all of these details, trying to find material. Because some of this material is not available. I'm going to be honest with you, but somebody has it, and we can, Fallon County, they may have something that we will borrow or purchase from them that make this job possible. And those are the challenges.
Yeah, and under both pathways, whether it's the 10-year plan you presented, this particular set of projects here lined up, it still comes back again to the reserves and the budgetary issues. Is we also have a cost of service study and a rate study in the works right now too. And how is this going to play into that determination for the, FCS that's working on that, so that we have a really good picture of what's going to happen to our rates, whether we take this path or whether we take the other path. Now, we've thrown FCS another curve, in my opinion, for them to have to take a look if we go this route in full blown, go this route and see it through to the end.
See, I don't know if we've thrown FCS a curve, because we've talked to them about $100+ million 10-year work plan. They're already planning on some of this work. What I think we need to focus on is taking transformers and placing them in better spots for the PUD to save us money, or to save us the cost of a transformer. So I think in this particular project, the benefits really outweigh the negatives, as long as we can keep the cost down when we start working in Dana Roberts. And that may be the place we say, hey, we'll set this transformer over here and become a spare until we can do Dana Roberts. It is dictated by money.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I like this alternative. But again, at the end of the day, what's the cost, the net difference between this, the path we were on with the 10-year plan? I think that's worked at staff or FCS or whomever it is, ICPE, whoever. We really need to have that information ASAP.
This doesn't decrease what our 10-year work plan is. That plan is, we're gonna spend $100 million. This spends a little bit of it up front, but the overall cost changes very little because of this. It just gives us a 2.5-year jump.
So Ken?
Yeah, and as long as you're telling us that we will maintain flexibility, be conscious of the costs, if we can get a 2.5-year jump on our 10-year plan, which increases the reliability and resiliency of the system, I don't have any difficulty supporting it. With the understanding that we're going to monitor the costs and not draw the reserves down to the point where we have to be concerned about compromising the 90-day margin of safety.
Yeah, and I think keeping us informed as to how it's going is going to be the critical part.
So, and I will address that. Part of the champion's role on all these projects is to report back to the board on a regular schedule how we're doing timeline, budget, and those things.
Yeah.
So that will be, as projects develop, the champion's job to report back to them.
It sounds like a good plan. Everything always comes down to execution. So just
It does.
keeping us posted. Is there more on this one?
There's just 2 more slides we can go over.
Okay.
Putting the backup transformer in the Port Ludlow Bay substation.
Okay.
And then the budget briefly. Melanie, if you want to go over that.
And I got confused. Okay, that's why I got confused, because the 20 megawatt going into Port Townsend is from Discovery Bay, and then the refurbished one is going to.
Yeah, it's from PL. We should have probably marked it.
Right. Okay. I lost the peanut under the.
Yep,
the
perfectly
shells.
understand.
So estimated project cost, new Quilcene substation transformer would total 1.3 million in estimated costs. Refurbished Port Ludlow substation transformer, 481,000. Engineering, materials and labor, about 2 million. So totaling to be 3,781,000. And just a note on the labor cost too, we'd be relying on ICPE for the engineering designs and helping us with some questions on the loading issues. But we do think it's also a unique project that could be good exposure for our employees as learning opportunities.
Sure. And I realize these are estimates. These are projections. You're coming, okay, best estimate. And I don't know, Mike, how much you've been involved in this, or other staff, if you can answer this. So I think this kind of gets back to Dan's earlier question of how much of this do we have budgeted now, and how much of it didn't we have budgeted, and which budgets do we think it's going to fall into this year?
Right. What's the
next
net?
year? Yeah. Kind of how much of that was already budgeted roughly? Do we know?
The 1.1 million. So we got 1.1 million for the new Quilcene sub transformer. Budget for 2024. We have $850,000 for Quilcene substation engineering. We have money that because we were going to look at Hastings substation. This is moving stuff around. So between Hastings substation upgrade engineering and construction, we had about almost another $1 million. It's a little over $975,000. So we have that money that we would then transfer to one of them. The Port Ludlow sub, that one was hard because we didn't know that one was going to go out and need to be refurbished.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was hard. We couldn't really budget for that one.
Right, I get,
But
maybe-
but we have money in for the Hastings that we can transfer to Dana Roberts or one of the other substations that we need to do.
so what's your, I'll just be direct. So what's your guess, Mike, beyond, so you're working, we haven't fully seen the 2025 budget yet. That's kind of in process. What's our guess of the additional drawdown of cash reserves that this is gonna take over
So,
the 2 years?
I mean, so a lot of this, the Quilcene sub transformer, the way I was just looking at the POs just a little bit ago, we have to pay within 30 days of delivery. You know, we have to pay some, so some of that, a lot of that's gonna be drawn down in the next probably 60 to 90 days based on the timeline. You know, so a lot of the work, we're gonna have very little big ticket items probably for the 25 budget. I haven't been involved haven't been in all the discussions that Will, Kevin, and Melanie have been in with ICPE. You know, but we do have the engineering costs for 24 that's out there. How much, when and how they bill us, I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe the answer is it's gonna cost roughly 3.78 million.
Well, I'm hearing less. My math in my head is telling me it's gonna be less than 3.78 because of the money that's already designated in 24. Is this 37.8 be above and beyond what we already plan on spending in
Looking at their
24?
slide, we've paid 567,000 because we've already paid some previously. We have to do progress payments on transformers. We've already paid some of the progress payments on the transformer.
Sure.
We've already paid on the refurbished, so right now, left today, if we did everything by the end of 24, we would still have $3.2 million.
Okay,
So there's the
these
number.
estimates.
so 3.2, but we oftentimes we will say, we'll net some, we'll be adding to reserves 1 million or 2 million a year. So the total net impact to reserves might be $1 million, might be $2 million.
It's hard to say really, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
And
That's fair.
I want everyone to know there was a small discussion on Friday. We met with ICPE today. We are pushing as fast as we can to bring things to the board.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way this project really pencils out, is if we do it.
Yeah.
So a lot of information we'll bring back to you, but really there has been, even on the discussions with ICP on Friday, they weren't sure they could or would work on this project with us because of the material questions, because they have other work, we're gonna, so a lot of this is thrown together. It is our best guess.
Right.
Mike's right. Some of these dollars have already been paid, but the transformer to start with, we will pay for whether it sits
It's
and
it's
be
budgeted.
energized or sits in the dirt.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of driving this. We can either set that first transformer on cribbing and wait 2 years to build the new bay, or we can start implementing some of these changes.
Giving us more capacity.
Yeah, the synergy is there. I'm not arguing anything that. It's just, I think we really need to be clear and, right up front with what the costs are going to be, best guessed about when they're going to drop, which budget they're going to impact, and what it does to reserves, because we're about to lose the credit from BPA in the next month or two. That ends, and we're going to be back to paying full boat for our energy and our transmission from BPA. So we're going to see an increase in costs that we haven't been seeing. So that padding to our reserves that we've been seeing for the last 2 years is about to end.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going to hit here at once. They're going to impact revenues and expenses.
But I'm hearing what Kevin's saying too, is that staff is trying to push really hard to get us in a position to take advantage of this opportunity. And I don't think the commission is saying stop or slow down. I think, again, we just want to be kept informed. Don, you got your hand up?
Yeah, the other side of the equation on this to think about as well is that repairing damage from coal load system type problems, the damage that can occur from that would make these numbers look pretty small. So it's best to get out ahead of it as far as you can and as quick as you can.
If we don't do anything, that lack of action could put us in a really bad spot.
And again, I think that comes back to the pluses and the minuses, pros and cons.
Right.
negatives, I think staff should really produce something to show to the best of their knowledge of what the negative are and what the positive are from a financial standpoint and from a grid reliability standpoint.
So Dan, I'm gonna push back on you a little bit. You're making it sound like you want staff to do extra work in order to pursue this opportunity, and that causes me some concern.
No, I'm not trying to slow anything down. I want to make sure we're doing our due diligence as we go on this and we're not getting too far over the skis,
Okay,
primarily financially, because we are, like I said, coming up on the 2025 budget. We're looking at the rates and what's going to come out of that cost of service. And again, we're, what our revenues are versus what our expenditures are matter, and how far we're going to draw down a reserve and for how long matters. So I just think, I'm not telling them to do whatever, but I'm just asking that they definitely look at all these things and as they're going through this and provide us with their best estimate at this point, or what they do or, do know for certain. So I'm not trying to say we shouldn't do this. I agree that I like this plan,
okay,
but we need to do it right.
okay. And I think what that reflects too is continuing to work as a team, continuing to keep the finance people involved so that you all can answer questions in these situations. Okay.
Yeah, and I brought this slide back just because this is all about adaptability
Mm-hmm.
and taking advantage of opportunities, but we also want to play within our policies.
Yep.
And so we're going to be, as we move forward, we may have to have more adaptations. We'll continue to update the board.
Well, it's creative thinking. We kind of hinted at it during that, whatever day that was, when we looked at the 10-year plan, that, hey, what's this 5? How could we? So you guys jumped on it, and I appreciate that.
I don't think it hurts to get 2.5 years ahead of inflation.
No, things are always going to cost more down the road. Yeah. And if we're using something as opposed to just having it sit there, costing us the same, it's like, why not get some use out of it?
Yeah, I would think naturally that we would have planned on putting that spanking brand new transformer to work somewhere. So
More staff report?
We're done.
Okay, well, that was definitely longer than normal. All right, so our next item, I think, is commissioner reports. Correct? Yep. Dan, would you be willing to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. So I attended the Waputa Commissioner Education Committee meeting on July 17th. Scott Wilson from BPA talked about BPA's provider choice contract process and the timeline with the focus on what BPA products would look like and the tier 2 requirements would be for the power requirements in those contracts. BPA expects members will sign contracts at the end of 2025. So again, we're going to have some clarity within the next year about what kind of our power rates are going to look like and what kind of headroom we're going to have. And I would argue there's a formula out there, and I don't know that we're going to like what we see come 2025. That's just a guess at the moment. Still things being beaten out in that contract. There was also a panel with representatives from Klickitat PUD, Pacific PUD, and NRU, the Northwest Requirement Utility Organization, regarding the BPA contract products and energy goals and the challenges that PUDs will face, leading up to those contract agreements and during the course of the 20 years of the contracts. So again, there was a lot of discussion along what I was just talking about of what different utilities are going to be able to do to get their energy and what those costs are going to look like. It's still a lot of things up in the air. I attended the Waputa Committee meetings on July 18th at Cowlitz PUD headquarters. At the Water Committee meeting, Bill Clark and Waputa staff talked about legislative issues that the association will address in the upcoming months and during the 2025 legislative session. One of those issues is the $1 million appropriated for several PUDs and how the state will set the guidelines for disbursement of those funds for the WSDOT culvert replacement / utility relocation
Can you
costs.
pause for just a moment? I'm hearing feedback from somebody. I think it's me.
Is it?
Oh, no.
This must be my mic. Am I talking too loud?
You guys just have your hand next to your face.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
Echo. All right. So I attended the Waputa Board of Directors meeting on July 19th. Waputa has hired a new contract lobbyist. The executive director will make an offer to a candidate for the new Waputa staff position of regulatory affairs, and that actually has been done. And I think they have hired that position. So I don't know if the actual message has gone out in full yet about who that person is or not. So that's all I'll say at this point. So those two positions have been filled. Waputa issued an RFP for an assessment of the Waputa office building in Olympia. And I seen today, there was an email we should have all gotten that they got two contacts back on the RFP to look at what the building needs to have done with it, to be upgraded or retrofitted or whatever it needs. I don't know if that included the solar array on the building or not. So I haven't had a chance to review those yet. Let's see. Retired Senator Tim Sheldon gave a report for Energy Northwest. Josh Logano has left Energy Northwest and Brian Cunnington is replacing him. So that's the person we'll see representing Energy Northwest at the association meetings. Senator Sheldon reminded member PUDs that Energy Northwest offers grant writing assistance services. He talked about federal funding secured for EV charging projects, large-scale solar project, a micro nuclear reactor project with Westinghouse, as well as a small modular reactor project at the Columbia generating site. Let's see what else. I met with General Manager Street on July 22nd. I attended the Energy Northwest meeting in the Tri-Cities on July 24th and 25th. I met with PUD General Counsel on July 29th. I attended the BOC retreat on the JPUD 10-year planning on July 30th. And then I attended the Port Ludlow Village Council meeting on August 1st. Met with General Manager Street on August 2nd. And then coming up, I will attend the Public Infrastructure Fund Board meeting tomorrow, August 7th. Later tomorrow, I'll leave for the PPC Members Forum in Portland. I'll attend the PPC Executive Committee meeting on August 8th. I'll attend the Jefferson County Fair booth on August 10th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. I will attend the Puget Sound Pacific Trail Coalition meeting on August 12th. And then later I'll attend the BOC special meeting. Later that day, then I'll attend the Growth Management Steering Committee meeting on August 13th from Spokane via Zoom while I'm there for the NOAANET meeting on the 14th. I'll attend the BOC special meeting on August 16th via Zoom. I will meet with General Manager Street on August 19th. That concludes my report.
Okay.
And September gets really crazy.
And you want to go?
Sure. So on the 17th, I had a meeting with Don McDaniel. Attended some of the Waputa committee meetings, the 18th and 19th, as well as meeting with the general manager. Met again with the general manager on the 22nd. On the 23rd, I met with the assistant general manager. On the 26th, had meetings with the general manager, Don McDaniel, Joel Paisner. Had lunch with Joel Paisner on the 29th. Attended our strategic planning meeting on the 30th. Attended the EDC board meeting on the 1st. And that was a special board meeting to go over their strategic plan. And breaking news today, the North Olympic Peninsula recompete plan was funded.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
And so that will be very helpful to the EDC, which was counting on funding going forward. So on the 2nd, I met again with the general manager, as well as attended a meeting with representatives from the Eagle Ridge community, who were, as you know, very concerned about low water pressure and fire safety. Looking forward to the budget review special meeting on the 16th. I won't be able to attend the fair this weekend because I'm getting together with family. Family is converging on us, so that will occupy my time. But I do look forward to attending the all-county picnic on the 18th, and that's my report.
Okay. My report is on the 17th of July. I had a phone meeting with Carrie Welch, who is the tenant, one of the tenants at Peterson Lake, who came here and testified a while back. That same day, also had a phone meeting with Marcus Perry, our BPA rep, on the 17th and 18th. Caught some of the Waputa meetings. On the 18th, had a phone meeting with Don McDaniel. On the 23rd, phone meeting with Kevin Street. And then on the 24th and 25th, attended the Energy Northwest board meetings in the Tri-Cities. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through that because it was pretty momentous stuff that occurred. The full board of directors approved a strategy for Energy Northwest to pursue the development of new nuclear generating resources. It does not mean approval of any specific nuclear project, but did approve the strategy that staff brought forward. And that was required for the staff and the executive board to continue to work towards that. And separately, there was authorization for formation of a limited liability corporation, which is entitled Energy Northwest New Nuclear. The purpose of that LLC would be to handle money of investors in that new nuclear project. There would be no, and then an LLC is appropriate as no public bonds are anticipated to be used. And that we were notified that there is a major new investor, which is a communications company, which is interested in the power for their data centers. And again, this doesn't actually build the plant, but the new funding would take Energy Northwest through a year or two of the feasibility and getting towards, the goal would be to get to where they can borrow the 80% of the money for the project from the Department of Energy. Let's see. So it really is funding the feasibility project, but they're continuing to draw interest, and it's not from public, it's not from BPA, it's not from any of the public power utilities. So an LLC is the way that they're looking at spinning this because it's private money.
And they're talking about off-taking is who's going to get the power off as part of that discussion.
Exactly. The first module of roughly 300 megawatts would go to this investor. And what I haven't asked is that there was a private utility, private for-profit investor-owned utility that had invested some initial money, and I don't know how this affects them. So that's a follow-up question.
And there was a question on ownership too. At the end of the day, who will own the project?
Right. And none of those. So staff is still in negotiations. Let's see. So there was an executive board resolution authorizing the creation of the new nuclear, which passed. And again, the purpose is to obtain financing for small nuclear reactor project, repay such financing as required under the terms, and to enter into contracts for the construction, operation, and sale of power, pending board of directors approval. So it was pretty momentous. And so the money is coming, and with money comes negotiating and contracts. So that's what Energy Northwest staff is working on. And under the LLC, Bob Schutz is the director or the CEO of the LLC. Other work, there's just so much happening. Looking ahead at next year, they're on Columbia Generating Station. They have a number of projects totaling $24 million. A lot of it was water circulation pump related, different pieces of equipment that are now, 40, 50 years old, that they're having to repair. And looking also ahead to next year, they have the extended power uprate and a refueling outage. So lots of work going into next year. And at the end of the meeting, John Saven, the president of the executive board, offered some reflections. And his reflections included that over the years, BPA has put pressure on Energy Northwest to reduce costs, and Energy Northwest has done that. But now, and in the near future, Energy Northwest will need to staff up both for the EPU and a possible small modular nuclear plant. And then he talked about how will the executive board participate in oversight and due diligence as the SMR goes forward. We don't know what governance of the SMR will be yet, and they're having a retreat in August. So very interesting meetings, and Dan was there too, so he got a little flavor for what's coming up.
On the uprate,
mhm.
I initially I thought it was like 170 megawatts and now it's like 270. Did he ever come to a solid number? I'm hearing different numbers over the last year.
There's I want to say that they're going from 1,200 to 1,500 megawatts, but now I can't remember either. But it was like around,
Somewhere over.
it was
over
around 300
200.
megawatts, 250 megawatts is pretty sizable. And again, it's something that other nuclear plants have done, but I think it's going to be challenging. On the 29th of July, I met with Joel Paisner. On the 30th, was here for our special meeting. On the 1st, I was invited to go out to Peterson Lake. And it's the first time I've ever been there. And I met with the current tenants who've been taking really nice care of the PUD house and the orchards and the land around it, and had a lot of pride in it. And I passed back to manager Kevin Street that they are really, with due diligence, trying to get out of there. They were giving notice that they had to be out by August 31st. They have made an offer on a house in Quilcene. It was accepted, but as Ken knows, it's challenging to pick up and move and get out. And it's just such a lovely place. They sent me back with a jar of honey that they produce from their own beehives. And early September is bee harvest time. And they asked if there was any way that they could get a couple extra weeks just to get the honey collected and the bees transferred to their new place. It would help them a lot. And I passed that information on to Kevin, and he said he would be working with our lease management company on that, on what can be done, because they're trying, to get out, and it's hard in this housing market, but they're doing everything they can. I'll be at the fair the 9th, 10th, and 11th. I have another booth, the Port Townsend Music Boosters, that I'm going to be at. So I'll be there, and I'll come by our booth when I can. And looking ahead on the 13th, I talked to Kevin about this. The presentation we had that talked about electricity shortages in different parts of our county and water shortages on some parts of our system just really makes me concerned with how the county is handling permitting and how we're communicating back and forth our ability to serve new development. And talked to Kevin about this, and I reached out to county staff, and they're able to meet on August 13th at 2:00. So I'm going to be there, and I just passed on to Kevin if you want any other staff there too. I'm happy to work with them. But my main thing is just to find out what the big issues are. How is the county handling this from their end, and what is our opportunities to engage with them, and what are we doing now? So I'll bring back whatever I learn, and I'm just afraid of things falling through the cracks right now. And then the 14th, there's a NOAANET board meeting. I'll plan to listen in on that remotely, and then I'll be at our meeting on the 16th, and that is my report.
So one quick observation about the Energy Northwest meeting there, and that's on this project that they're working on in the LLC and all that. It really looks, and there's a lot of federal money coming down for nuclear through on whatever legislation is in play still. But I'd like to see us take a little bit stronger stand on supporting, coming out and saying that we really do support, these small modular reactor projects and the micro reactor projects and that sort of thing. I don't know if the members are giving any kind of statements beyond just verbal statements or not, but I don't know how Commissioner Collins feels about it, but I'd like to see us, be a little more overtly, talking about our support for the nuclear process moving forward. So Commissioner Collins, you have any thoughts on that? Is that something we can do verbally at the meetings, or is that something maybe we should send a statement out about, or any thoughts?
No, I'm fine with either. Maybe making a statement collectively is the best way of demonstrating support, but it's been clear to me from what I've read for a long time that we're just not going to be in a position to meet the demand unless we invest in small nuclear reactors. There was an article in the paper just the other day about how much energy the data centers are drawing so that Grant County had to purchase electricity from elsewhere, and they have they have a couple of dams there. So it certainly strikes me that if we want to be forward looking, that small nuclear reactors, I think, are the only option because they function when it's dark out. They function when the wind isn't blowing. I certainly support renewables and everything we can do to try to have a resilient grid and meet the demand. And I think it's going to be a huge, huge challenge.
Yeah, if we want to try and meet the decarbonization goals that are being set in electrification of the economy and transportation, I think this is something that has to be pursued, and Energy Northwest obviously is in a position to do that. So, and I know that there was a lot of questions at that meeting. It's probably one of the most active Energy Northwest meetings I've been privy to. And, you know, there's a lot of good concerns, a lot of good questions. And I'm at a point where I think Energy Northwest and the staff are looking for that little bit of extra, yeah, let's do it type of a mentality. And so next, you know, as things progress, I just was wondering if it was okay if we make that kind of a statement at the meetings, or if we wanted to prepare some sort of a written statement and just throwing it out there as to how we want to proceed moving forward. But I think we do need to show that little bit of extra oomph behind supporting what Energy Northwest is doing on the small modular and micro reactor front.
Well, my concern is cost. And I think that was really interesting, your point, Ken, on the data center thing. I don't know if either one of you caught it, but the Seattle Times investigative arm ran a long article on data centers and how much power they're using, and the lobbying efforts that went into this back in like 2006 or something at the state legislature, that it was seen as a way to create economic development in rural parts of our state, you know, Chelan, Douglas, Grant counties, et cetera, and talked about some communities like Quincy, where I was born, and they've got all this money now from property taxes that they've been able to use to help build new schools, new hospital, et cetera. But then they announced at the tune of like $400 or $500 million that have subsidized the building of these data centers. And now all the energy's gone. You know, whatever excess energy is just gone. And the question is, what have we gotten for that? And how the data on jobs created is blocked. You can't find how many jobs have been created because the state passed rules saying we're not going to release this information, and they're not auditing it. So it's really interesting. Yeah, we kind of have ourselves in a pickle, and part of it is self-created. And there's a real question on what good is coming from these data centers, and would they have come anyway without these additional tax breaks?
Well, again, and the data centers are part of it, but the AI, you know, as they're
Right.
looking at doing and utilizing AI, and even the state has an office kind of dedicated to looking at that. We heard from their office at one of the Waputa meetings. It's still, again, if they have such a strong lobby, they're going to get the energy. We're going to keep expanding these things, and we don't want them taking our energy. So we're going to have to develop newer and larger and baseload type energy. And that's where I think, yeah, there's a big price tag to it. But again, I think that money is going to be out there through the federal government, particularly for a few projects. And I think Energy Northwest is in a position with only 2 or 3 other places maybe in the country to pursue it. So I think we should try supporting them as best we can.
Okay. So again, there is no grant money from the federal government for this. This is loans, which have to be paid back. And what they're looking at now is how much will it cost to build these things? And all the public agencies, we indicated some support, we kicked some money in, but that's kind of been the end of it. And no other public agencies are coming forward to buy or build nuclear power right now. It's the privates. And really, Energy Northwest is hoping that this works and hoping that they'll know what the costs are, and then be able to turn around and come back to the publics and say, okay, now we know what they cost. Maybe we can bring the cost down. Will you be interested? So I think it's, you know, it's to be determined.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier in your report that there's private entities now that are looking to partner with, you know, joint action agencies like Energy Northwest. And so, and again, there's a lot of details, devils in the details about public money being invested into private projects, you know, and vice versa, that sort of thing. So that's what the LLC is there to deal with and help with. But again, you know, I'm not to beat the dead horse here, but I think we should definitely forward our, you know, make it known that we support what Energy Northwest is doing.
And I think Energy Northwest is becoming more capable, and we have this need as a region for clean energy, and they're trying to bring the resources they have, which is an expertise in nuclear, and there's all this discussion about new nuclear, and I think they're representing us well. If there's an opportunity, kind of like what Kevin is and staff are doing with us on our own electrical system, trying to get it in shape, they're trying to see if new nuclear is an opportunity for our region, and we're going to find out. All right, so I think we've completed our reports, and getting back to the agenda. How are we doing on time? 5:30, so we got to go a little faster for the back end of this. So I think we're on consent now. So any changes to consent agenda?
I'll make
None.
the motion, accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on consent agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. We don't have any old business. New business was just we got the report on the financial audit. We added it as a new business item, and I think staff.
Excuse me. I have a question about the financial report. I had my hand raised.
Okay, well, we're not quite to that, Roger. We're introducing the
I
item.
think it was in
It was on the
consent.
consent
It was
agenda,
in
I think.
consent.
Well,
It's on the consent agenda.
that.
How do you want to deal with it?
So Roger, the time to talk about consent agenda is during public comment, which was way back at the beginning of the meeting. So we advertise that if you have a question or a comment on items on the consent agenda, it's during the public comment phase. So you kind of missed that.
Could you take this off the consent agenda so we could talk about it?
Agenda has been approved, Roger.
I
So
had my hand raised. You had no public discussion before you approved the consent agenda.
that's because that's how consent agenda works. Your opportunity to comment on consent agenda is during the initial public comment phase, which I read the script. It says that. So I'm sorry you missed that.
Sorry, didn't get here till 4:02.
Okay, well, that's how it works.
So you don't want to talk about it?
You have the opportunity at any open public comment period to talk about anything you want for 3 minutes. And if it relates to the financial audit, you can talk about it on our next item. So I'm moving us ahead, but you can email us and you can call us, and you can, at the next public meeting, you can raise it, a question or a comment. So there's multiple opportunities for you. So new business, Mike, we had the financial audit results, and I think there was a request by the attorney to actually take action on that. Do you have a motion for us?
So yes, we would like the board to approve a motion accepting the 2023 audit that was presented. The findings were presented earlier today by Tyler Kennedy with PM. I'm not going to try to remember the name.
So I move that we accept the financial audit results as presented early in the previous session of the board.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Do we have any discussion? I see a hand raised. Is that Roger? Is that still, do you have one on the financial audit? Looks like that went down. Okay. Motion the second, no further discussion. All in favor of the motion approving the financial audit, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Hadlock wastewater interlocal. And we'd asked for this, just kind of maybe highlighting the issues. I know we're a little time constrained, but whatever you can do to kind of remind us of the issues that we're going to be faced and when we might see a document for like an interlocal agreement.
And Joel's gonna jump in because he's fine tuning the agreement that should be done shortly.
I don't, I'll give you a summary of what the materials I've seen. But we saw a very, very early, very, very rough version of a proposed interlocal agreement that Jefferson County staff put together. It's now at the prosecutor's office. And I'm set to talk to him on Friday about the substation purchase agreement and not the sewer interlocal, but I'll ask him what the timing is on that. So I can provide you with some general concepts that they put forward, and they may change for the next time you see them. But and then there's some open items as well. But
Well, I guess
basically, yeah.
what would help me is where our staff and their staff see agreement and what those commitments, how they impact us. That's kind of what I'm interested in, just so again, we're not surprised when this interlocal eventually shows up and we're expected to approve it because everybody's done so much work on it. So is there a way to kind of highlight, here's kind of where we're in general agreement, and or is that not possible?
Well, it's hard to know what if we're in general agreement until I actually see a document that's blessed by the prosecutor and the county. But we've seen one that staff has put together. And I can provide kind of a rough overview of those if you want to hear what those items are. I mean, this is what they've offered to us, and I think Kevin could probably better tell you if we're in agreement with them or not.
Please do.
Okay. So basically it's the Hadlock Sewer is owned by the county. They're developing it. They're going to enter into a operations and maintenance agreement with us. We're still negotiating on the time frame. They had a very, very, very long time. I think we'd be more interested in sort of a maybe several years of it with an option at the end of those years to back out if it's not going the way we like. But I'm not sure if they'd be amenable to that. So that's one item
So
for
length
discussion.
and how long we want to commit to operating it is already one issue. Okay, good.
Correct, yeah. They've offered to pay for half of a treatment plant operator, and that includes all salary, fringe benefits, overhead. They will pay for the PUD's labor and equipment for maintenance and operation of the sewer collection system, which sounds great, but I think once you dig into that item, it gets a little bit more complicated because, we just have to figure out how to account for equipment and materials that may actually be used not only by us for the plant, the Hadlock plant, but for other systems. So that needs to be worked on.
Well, sounds like an LUP then. How we have to account for it.
And that may just be folks like Kevin and the county engineer, just sitting down and figure out what makes most sense. All materials, supplies, and invoicing, they'll be invoiced to the county. They'll pay those straight out. We have to negotiate what an agreed upon overhead rate will be for that will include, all of the PUD's overhead, including management costs and things like that. They've offered a flat fee of $800 a month for use of our customer billing system. I don't know if that catches all of our costs. And what they're proposing the services that the PUD provides is staffing and oversight of the Hadlock sewer system, including additional staff required for operating a public wastewater system, which we assume they'll pay for. We're responsible for customer service calls and complaints. We're responsible for customer billing services that utilize existing PUD customer billing systems. A low-income program that's adopted by the county will be implemented by the PUD. And the only markups that they're proposing that we're allowed to do are on a negotiated and agreed upon overhead basis. These are some of, this may be repetitive, but it's some of the terms yet to be negotiated. Like I said, how will the equipment costs be allocated between the PUD sewer utility and the Hadlock sewer? Default, haven't talked to them about what happens if they default or we default. Again, the length of the agreement, we don't know. And, the allocation overhead cost. And I've just thrown these in for things for you to consider as possible risks. Although they will hold us harmless and indemnify us for work on the system, there is, to the extent that we and our staff do certain things that we have control over, we will bear some liability. Now, I assume that's an insurable risk, but that's just, because we're entering into a contract for operations and maintenance, and we're going to be doing that. There's always a risk for increased liability. We want to have as many belts and suspenders on operational cost overruns. And I haven't really seen any language yet. There will be that we want to consider. And then the long-term costs that the PUD bears may differ from what we currently anticipate. So, just kind of some unknowable things, but they're just out there.
How are the rate setting? How is that going to be handled for this system?
The county commissioners will set rates.
Okay.
They will get a recommendation from staff and their consultants for rates.
Okay, and then are we collecting the money then
Yes.
on the rates? And okay. And yeah, it just seems like it's kind of in our interest to, try this for a few years and see if we can make it work and see how, what's not captured by rates in terms of costs of operation, if that's being adequately covered by the county. And I guess if we decide we can't make this work, they're not willing to, we walk away from it and it falls back in their laps and they've got to hire somebody to operate it, right? I mean, that's basically how it would work.
Joel and I've talked to Monty. We're looking at, depending on how long the contract, but in 2 years, there's so many unknowns right now that there would be a review of costs and those kind of things. Because we don't know some of the things that are going to be required. So
Sure. And I suppose there may be, opportunities to expand the system or do things to it that might help the revenue side of it down the line.
Well, this is the first of 3 phases. So I'm not mistaken. So I don't know when they plan on starting the second phase, but
some of the second phase, they already
is it?
started.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any more questions at this point? And I guess remind us when it's planned to go into operation?
As soon as possible. We were hoping we could hire or start the hiring process in July. They are, from what I've been told, ahead of schedule, but we're hesitant to hire the employee until, the agreement's been worked out with everyone.
Okay. All right. Any questions from commissioners? I don't have any more questions. I appreciate that it's hard to give an update on something like this that's moving, but I think it really helps us to give us a partial picture of where we're at so that when we get to the next phase, we're not caught cold on it. Okay, thank you. Next item, give me a second here. Next item is the United Good Neighbors Give Jefferson 2024. Who's leading us on this
So
one?
Jennifer's gonna lead you on this one. I'm a bit under the weather and don't trust my
Okay.
voice.
No worries, Jean. Fire away, Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Gierseth. I'm the manager of customer service. I got two, thank you. We have an opportunity right now to apply for a $10,000 grant with Give Jefferson. It's the United Good Nations annual campaign to raise funds to support organizations in Jefferson County that provide for basic needs of our neighbors. Funds are raised through givejefferson.org. There's workplace giving campaigns, direct mailings, other media campaigns. And UGN also acts as a pass-through organization, allowing donors to give to a specific organization, or they can give to the UGN General Fund. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with that. I spent the last 5 years on the board for United Way of Clallam County. This is a similar, it's the Jefferson County version. So.
Yep.
So this handy dandy little chart here is gonna show our, and my little slides in front of it, sorry. It's gonna show our excess burden. So the wages right now nationwide are struggling to keep up with the current level of inflation. And we're seeing an increase in the number of households needing assistance, but whose income is over the limit. These are our neighbors. These are people who were making ends meet just a few years ago. But they're now struggling to afford their day-to-day living expenses. According to the 2023 legislative report from Commerce, 50% of low-income households are energy burdened, and the assistance need or excess burden right now is $3.2 million in Jefferson County. Low income is, we're defining it under CETA as the Washington State Commerce as the greater of 80% of area median income, or 200% of federal poverty level adjusted for household size. So if a single person would qualify at just over $50,000 a year per the income guidelines published by the Department of Energy. So we're really trying to make up that difference here. So funding levels, our goal as stated under RCW is 60% of the assistance need, so approximately $1.9 million. Current funding, including rainy day donations and admin costs of the low-income program, is just over $600,000. So we have a lot to make up there. And that's just for 2030. So we've got a long way to go. In 2050, they want to have 90% of the current energy assistance need met. There are a lot of programs available to assist households with incomes at or below 150% of federal poverty level, including our own low-income rate reduction and rainy day programs. The state home energy assistant program is also now available to help people at or below 80% of area median income, or AMI is what we see there. So thanks to the Washington Families Clean Energy Credits Grant Program, which is funded through the Washington State Climate Commitment Act, we can get a glimpse of what to expect in the future. So this is Dan's slide, because it really is what we're looking at moving forward. It's put a spotlight on how many people are either unserved or underserved by our current assistant programs. This level of participation happened within a matter of weeks of opening our application portal. We still have more than a month until the application period closes for this program, and they can only qualify once. So this is one-time $200 credits for 1,589 people since July.
But that's an indicator of who will be eligible for other discounts moving forward, correct?
Absolutely, and we're going to see it go higher. my customer service team gets calls, like lots of calls daily, trying to apply for this program. That's what
Because
they
now
want.
they've been noticed and they're in the system, so
Mhm.
they're gonna be tracking what they're eligible to get.
Right, and they're trying to go through the process of applying.
So basically doubled is what we're looking at.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it triple or quadruple by September 15th when it closes.
So does
Yes,
that have a budget impact on that?
Well, that
To try and make
luckily-
it up in, I realize it's over the course of years, but what kind of trajectory we need to be on to meet the state requirements.
So that's what we're trying to plan for now. We want to make sure that with this type of funding, this $10,000, grant, if we can get it, we're going to apply for it, would go toward the difference between what we do now and what we plan to do in the future. Our recommendation is that the funds would go toward, customer owners, sorry. I came from healthcare. I keep trying to say patient and that's not right. So customer owners whose income is greater than 150% federal poverty level, but less than 80% of area median income. We're seeing area median income being used in place of or as the higher of when it comes to federal poverty level versus AMI American. So our recommendation is that the funds are to be used for shut-off prevention. Customer owners should have a shut-off notice in order to receive these funds. It should cover past due accounts up to $500. And we're not sure if reconnection fees would be eligible for assistance if it was provided post cutoff. What questions?
and
Sorry, go ahead, Jean.
I'd like to jump in real quick there. This is what we need the board to discuss. We need your feelings on this. And this is a bigger conversation. Kevin is reminding us every day of the millions of dollars we need to spend, which is going to have a rate impact on our customers. So we need to start this conversation now, how we're going to mitigate that impact for our folks.
So I'm trying to understand what the bottom line for the board is. It sounds like staff has been made aware of this $10,000 grant. You're talking about these other state policies that may have an impact on what we have to do for our low income programs. And it sounds like you're proposing some sort of new policy to create this additional fund that people can apply for who are above the 150% federal poverty level for the things that you're talking about, help with reconnect, et cetera, et cetera. If we get the grant, is that it?
We need to have a program like this regardless. But I would like the board to discuss using grant funds if we get them for this program, yes.
Yeah, so I guess I have no problem with staff going after the grant funds, and if we get some grant funding, then creating some additional help that we can offer. That's my position.
Yeah, just more clarification. Again, the $10,000 grant would be used to form the program, or it would actually go out to people?
Go to the customer.
It would go
owners.
to the customer.
Well,
It would,
to us on behalf of the.
yeah, it would create a bank of money that we could
Yes.
apply to people in need that fall into these categories. Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. So I think Gene's kind of hinting at this bigger issue of this unmet need and what these studies are showing and so forth. And I guess I have to better understand. I mean, there's studies that indicate burden, and then I want to know, not now, but when we're there talking about it, what are we mandated to do? Because that's the thing that's really unclear to me, because we started a low income program when we didn't have to, because we felt like it was the equitable thing to do because the prior utility did provide it. So we created that, we funded it. What I'm not clear on is what additional requirements do we have? Are those requirements going to go away if this thing on the ballot passes in the fall or not? So I've got a bunch of unknowns at this point in
Yeah.
terms of responding to some of the questions Gene's raising, but I think we're all saying, sure, go for it. But we need more information about, you know, future expansions and what we're required to do versus what we're, you know, think we should do, because again, it might be equitable.
Well, and like I said,
I think that that's all to be determined. It's happening within a larger political context, and I think we have to wait and see what expectations are put on us by the legislature and what sort of funding comes from the legislature and what form that will take.
Well, that's it, a one-time, payment. That doesn't said anything about what the future is going to be or what it's going to look like or what funding is going to come, to Ken's point. So again, I guess one of the questions I have beyond the grant, I think you have consensus on moving forward with the grant. I don't know if we
Yes.
need to make a motion for that or
Nope.
not.
You have consensus.
So my question is in the bigger picture of looking forward at this program, how much leeway or autonomy do we have? Just on that previous slide where it showed the, it wasn't that one, maybe it was the next one. It showed the 150% of poverty level and the 80% AMI. How much can we move those numbers around? Because I know Gene made a comment at the last meeting about we had employees that make really good money that qualify. Are we at the right place with those numbers? Do those two things correlate of where we really should be with those numbers in a program?
so I think when we look at 80% of AMI, that 1,589 is the 80%. We're seeing people go up to 150% of AMI. And I want to stress, with my background, like healthcare was my last 14 years. I've seen in that 14 years, I managed low income programs in Washington state. I've seen it go from a 200% federal poverty level state requirement to a 500% federal poverty level state requirement. And these are all write-offs. I think in Washington, we have to be prepared for the possibility of continued growth in requirements for charity care or for financial assistance programs, especially as a public utility district. I would be prepared for higher numbers. And that's what we really want to get the discussion started on.
But as a not-for-profit, you alluded to the other ones are for-profit entities, are they not? The hospitals, aren't they for-profit at the end of the day?
Not all of them.
501(c)(3) organizations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Ken said, we'll have to see. But I think thank you for finding the opportunity and putting your minds to how we can help, and go forth and see what you come back with.
All right.
Okay.
Well, did Gene want more from us at this juncture for budget purposes? I mean, or do you have what you need?
No, I have what I need. I just wanted to start the conversation. It is an ongoing conversation, and I just wanted to start your wheels turning.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is one of those items that probably once the dust settles and we know what the rules are and we know what it would mean for us to try and make a difference, it will probably need its own workshop because it's complicated.
Yes, very, very much so.
Last item on the agenda is the BOC meeting notice changes.
Real quick, we want to make the notifications go out automatically when we publish the agenda. It's a labor saving step for staff. Right now, we're copying. We publish the agenda. We copy the link. We put it on the website. We copy that page. We put it on the email chain, and then we have to create a calendar invite. So we can just do it automatically.
Right.
Hasn't been a big deal, but we already pay for the feature. We'd just like to use it. And
Right.
since it's a change to the process, we wanted to bring it to the board and make them aware of it.
Looks like better service too.
Everything should be better
Yeah.
all around. It does require, knock on wood, yeah. And we might have to make some refinements and adapt a little bit. But we will require some of the folks who've been getting it to sign up automatically. We can bulk add them, but in the past that's led to some spam rejection.
yeah.
So it's better if they add themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like a good tool. Again, maybe you alluded to it a little bit. about having to tweak it and watch it. How long will we keep real eyes on this to make sure that it is going off the way it's supposed to go off, rather than just fire and forget? It's all automated now, we can forget about it. Is somebody still gonna kind of track and watch this to make sure that it is populating correctly? I mean,
Yeah, we
how much
get the
staff is
report on
involved?
how many have been opened and things like that, so we can see with every notification that goes out, who's used it, who's not used it.
And maybe if there's like some sort of outreach just to let folks know that it's changing and how they can get back to us if it's somehow not working.
Correct. That's what we would do.
Okay. All right. Can I hear a motion?
So I move, yes, you do. I move to authorize the staff to use automated, regular, and special meeting notifications.
All right. Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All three said aye. We have approved that. Thank you for finding that feature and making it work.
Thank
We
you,
have-
commissioners.
Yeah, we have reached the end of our agenda. It is 6 o'clock on the button.
Anything real quick on the fair? Anything that we need? Are we gonna see anything coming out?
Jameson said he was gonna send something
Yeah,
out.
just curious. I know we're at Tuesday and Friday's.
I will double check them. I'm sure he'll have some.
Yeah. I
Okay.
thought I saw an email saying he was gonna send out notice. I was communicating with him about I was gonna be there, so he's
Okay.
sending something out. So look for that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. We are adjourned and it is 6:01.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Right.